Hey, Thomas here, and I wanted to do a quick demo of the new ESB Designer that we will be releasing soon. The main window will show all your projects, and you can create new projects like we did before, or open existing projects by selecting the project and opening. But you'll notice that when we do it we actually open up a completely different window. Before, it was part of all the projects opened under the same window. Since we have a lot more going on now with ESB, including the web API and the REST models, we had to open up a new window in order to fit everything on there. So most of this stuff is going to be carried over from the older version, but you'll notice that the designers here is where we're going to create our software. All versions, Express, Professional, and Expert, will have the data model. The web API model will only be in Professional and Expert, and the REST model will only be in Expert. So if we clicked on the data model, we open up the data model like we did before. We have our normal forms, and we have some new forms for authentication. That's easier said than done. Authentication. Anyway, this is actually going to be for the REST services that we're going to have to store the account information in the local database, and we're going to use these to authenticate the services we use under the REST. So if you're not using the REST stuff, you won't be using these types of forms. So we still have the normal navigation here. Now, what's different with the REST model, it will work similar to the data model here, but we're going to be able to break them up into different projects. So if you have 3 different services you want to show in your software program, we can break them up into 3 different little projects here to kind of help manage it instead of having one complete data model like we do for the database. It'll be easier for us to keep track and manage our models by breaking them up into little projects. There's only a couple forms that you're going to be able to use for the REST stuff. The grid form is probably your main go-to form. That's, I think, what most people use anyway when they're creating their software in the database. So this will be the normal list all your data into a grid format, but you drag it and drop it like you normally would. The web API stuff will work similar to that, where you're going to create forms that will access your MySQL databases. So your customers will be able to upload a PHP API file, and ESB will do that for them once they enter in their FTP credentials. And ESB will upload that file, and that will use that file to download the data or save data or delete data from that database. And if you're running a particular script on 4 or 5 different websites, you can actually have this ESB can actually connect to all 4 or 5 websites and pull the data down into one grid, so your customers can work on that data as if it's coming from one spot. So actually I wouldn't mind some feedback on that. Since we have these broken down into projects, would it be easier for you if I actually set the data model to where you can break these down into smaller projects instead of having all these forms onto one data model or one section? So say if you're the only problem is these relationships, if you're going to connect 2 forms via a relationship, it's got to be in the specific data model. So if you create different little projects like we do have for the REST model, actually I can show you what I mean. This is the REST. See, we have a Trello project right here that I've been using for testing, and we have 2 forms here. So if I had say a Google project, so I wanted to do a Trello boards functionality, and I want to use some Google services, I can create a new project for Google services. So it helps break up the project a little bit better. I can do the same thing with the data models to help break up. Say I want to have an account for my Trello authentication. I could create one project for that, and then I can go back and create a new project for the Google authentication. And that way I'm breaking up this into a little bit more easily digestible data models. This is basically a data model. It's kind of programming slang. So you also notice that I think I did a video earlier that this has changed quite a bit too. Since the original one wasn't working out too well, but we're able to double click on each editor to open them. That's new. You can resize these too. You notice that we got some scrolling here, but this will work a lot better than what the original version has. So when you update your program to the new version, just remember that you may have to change the size of them in order to see all your editors. Okay, let me know what you think about the changing the data model to a more of a micro project use like we have for the REST model and the web API model. Hopefully that makes sense.